around for just 2 minutes and she could lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
He has headphones on, his playing piano.
Yeah.
I wish my daughter would have done that.
Okay, it's a little bit after 7. We'll go ahead and get started. We'll call the Johnson City Council meeting number 25-05 to order. Cindy, roll call, please.
Councilmember Cope,
Here.
Evans,
Here.
Martin,
Here.
Reddy,
Here.
Burkhart.
Here.
I want to welcome everyone that is in the audience this evening. If you are here for an item that is on the agenda, we would ask you to wait for that item to come up and to address the council at that time. If you're here for an item that is not on the agenda, there will be an opportunity under public communications to address the council. The next item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Jake, have you ever led us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the agenda approval. Do we have any changes to the agenda?
No amendments this evening, Mayor.
Council, any changes? No. Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Reddy,
Yes.
Burkhart.
Yes.
Cope.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on to public communications. We do not have any scheduled public communications this evening. Is there anyone in the audience or online that would like to address the council under public communications? Seeing none, we'll move on to public hearings. First one, item 4A, conduct a public hearing to consider approval of resolution number 25-71, determining an area of the city to be an economic development area and that the rehabilitation, conservation, redevelopment, development, or combination thereof of such area is necessary in the interest of the public health, safety, or welfare of the residents of the city, designating such area as appropriate for urban renewal projects and adopting the Dragonwood Urban Renewal Plan. And we'll open this public hearing at 7:05.
Hey, good evening. I'm gonna pull up a map here real quick. Hopefully that loads. I'll start talking while I wait for that to load. So the creation of the Dragonwood Urban Renewal Area and corresponding plan is being proposed to assist with the development of properties in a portion of the Northwest Annexation Area near the interchange of highways 141 and 415, and to promote high-quality commercial and/or industrial development in the area. With the adoption of this plan, the city is designating this urban renewal area as appropriate for commercial and industrial economic development, which is consistent with our future land use plan and current zoning districts already in place. If adopted, this will be the city's 6th active urban renewal plan as of this date. The boundary display map that I have on the screen in front of you shows the properties that are proposed to be included in this urban renewal area. The proposed urban renewal plan outlines objectives and activities that may be undertaken to carry out urban renewal activities. These activities may include, but are not exclusive to, providing grants or making public improvements to encourage development of the area. Potential public improvements projects listed as eligible expenses within the URA include the full reconstruction of Northwest 110th Court between Highway 415 and Northwest Road Drive, including a multi-use trail and associated stormwater infrastructure. The city expects to consider a development agreement with 141 Business Park LLC, pursuant to which the developer would construct a large multi-phase 57-acre business park on development property located in this urban renewal area. That property is kind of the three properties here on the left-hand side of this map, two larger ones and then a smaller triangular chunk here. That's 141 Business Park LLC's portion.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Are you moving your mouse somewhere? Can't see where your mouse is there.
This parcel, and this parcel.
Okay.
The three to the left, which is the south on this map.
Looks like a whale that's heading that way, and the head of the whale, and the body of the whale. And the whale-
Great description. I should have worked that in.
Well, it's kind of,
It's,
it's unfortunate because the north is to that way, right?
Yeah, north is to the right. I'm not the engineer that did it. I don't know. But yes, the map
Well, I said it was unfortunate.
depicts north to the right on the picture here. So 141 Business Park plans to construct an initial phase totaling over 210,000 square feet of commercial building space and the creation or retention of jobs therein. The property is where I just highlighted. In return for the developer's performance under a development agreement, the city would provide incentives, including tax increment rebates, with the total cost of incentives not to exceed $3.5 million. The city also expects to consider requests for future development agreements for projects that are consistent with the plan but may not yet be identified, that encourage economic development or create public improvements in an amount not to exceed $15 million. Planning, engineering, and staff costs for activities and work within the urban renewal area are included as an amount not to exceed $50,000 for allowable expenses. I do want to say, please note that all development projects in this area that I've mentioned are conceptual in nature. Project specifics and proposed incentives would always be brought before council for approval. You're not approving any specific project here tonight. A consultation meeting with impacted taxing agencies, being the County of Polk County and the school district, Johnston Community School District, was held here at City Hall on February 13th, and no comments were received. The urban renewal plan was also brought before the Planning and Zoning Commission on February 27th, whose attached minutes note their finding that the Dragonwood Urban Renewal Plan is in conformance with the Thrive 2040 Comprehensive Plan and furthermore recommends approval of said plan. A public notice for this hearing tonight was published in the Des Moines Register on February 24th. No public comments have been received. Following the adoption of the urban renewal plan, staff intends to bring forward a tax increment financing ordinance for the properties included in this urban renewal area. And that ordinance may be found on your non-consent portion of tonight's agenda as item E.
Else have any questions?
Mayor, I do. Jacob, I feel like I saw a proposal, I don't know how long ago, for the property to that's along 141, but toward the south end of what's outlined here. Did we not see something at some point, some sort of preliminary sketch?
For the highway, for the 141 Business Park? Is that what you're?
I don't know. I don't remember the names of it.
Yes, we've seen a preliminary sketch that has a number of large format commercial flex type buildings on that site as a preliminary concept that they've shared with us, yes.
One of my concerns about the development here is I think we all would like a high quality development to happen along this stretch of 141. It's going to be part of Johnston. And when I drive around the state and I drive up and down Interstate 35, a lot of times what I see is the back of Menards and other buildings like that, 10-foot tall, screened fences, et cetera, et cetera. There is some setbacks and there is some landscaping, but then there are other places where landscaping is few and far between. What is really attractive is when they have headquarters that are built out there and they're very attractive. I'm not trying to say, you guys, I know you guys have a zoning, the Thrive plan, and you have zoning, et cetera. but guidelines for setbacks and views from 141 into that development, I think we've talked about this before. And I'd be interested in hearing more at some point, maybe in a smaller group, about what we have within our ordinances that we can help guide this development so that it's attractive and not the back end of some large buildings, large, I can't think of the word, big box stores. So I'd be interested in hearing that. I don't need to hear it now. I'm 100% am going to support this, but we should be aggressive in making sure that we hold some setbacks, identify some important places where we want this to look like an excellent, beautiful part of Johnston, and it's well-designed. I don't know how much guidance we can do with ordinances, but if we could set the tone, that would be great. Thanks.
Completely agreed. And just so you're aware, as additional conversations with that developer, we have emphasized exactly kind of what you talked about, higher quality materials, making sure it's not the back end of a building that's the front door to Johnston from that section of the city. So
Ethan, I was thinking that we had had this conversation previously in that direction.
I feel like we did.
Yeah, so appreciate you keeping that in mind and following up on that. Any other questions?
Yeah, I had a couple of questions. Is the golf course behind that, south of that?
the golf course is to the south of this
South of that.
property, yes.
And that, I kind of remember that interchange that there between 141 and that, what is that? The one.
That's Highway 415 or Sailorville Road or the Bridge Road.
Yeah, if I can recall correctly, they're going to redo that interchange, isn't that right? The interchange will be redone.
That I am not familiar
No,
with.
I think they're going to build a south down by the golf course will be a new interchange.
Okay, that's something we're going to be done with that.
There may be
existing.
changes to this as it goes west or something.
But not a, well,
Yeah.
maybe,
I might be.
So long-term, there's some plans that Polk County and the DOT have looked at that would realign some of that interchange. But I think with Towner Drive and some of the work that's happening there, that may not be needed and may not occur.
but the big
but there's been some
discussion we've
discussions.
had about an interchange is not this interchange. It's south of here.
Okay,
You see the trees there, Councilman Reddy?
Yeah.
So those are and then so it's south of there, quite a
Okay.
bit further. I mean, when I say quite a bit further, I don't know,
yeah, I might be wrong. but
quarter
it's
mile,
like
half
this.
mile. The interchange, that's where the new interchange will go into off 141, so.
Yeah, but they're also redoing, they are providing some sort of access going north from this interchange at some point, are they not? Mike? Yeah.
Yes, that's part of the joint project with the DOT, Polk County, and the city of Johnston, is that Northwest 110th will run north up to 106th, which actually allows them to close 121st. And that'll be the new access up towards Jester Park in that area.
And that's 110, not 114?
Correct. The 110th will parallel 114th.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for that. Thank you.
Any other questions for Ethan?
I think just to kind of follow up on the discussion, I probably the best way to help ensure the highest quality of product, of building quality there is through the TIF incentive package that I think this is really sort of designed, and I see Josh shaking his head in the back. So that's probably we aren't able to, I mean, and you could design an ordinance that would require building finishes to an incredibly high level. But I think the problem with that is that it's hard to do, it's hard to make that a sustainable policy. But the best way to probably approach it is to have an incentive package that sort of says, if you have buildings that face 141 that have a really high level of finish, then we can help with the cost of that with an incentive package. I think that's kind of the direction we're trying to go with that. So that's, I think, in an answer to your question, Councilmember Martin, that's the way to kind of balance that, right? So you those areas that we identify that we really want to make sure put Johnston's best foot forward, and this will be for folks coming in from the Northwest, their first opportunity exposure to Johnston in a lot of ways, that'll help accomplish that objective. And I think that's what this TIF policy, the direction this TIF policy is going, is to kind of prepare us to be able to do that.
Yeah, and just a point of clarification, this is the urban renewal plan and urban renewal area that will unlock the city's ability to use TIF as a financing mechanism. So the ordinance for, the TIF ordinance itself will be on the agenda later.
Right.
Assuming this is adopted.
Councilwoman Martin, our conversations with the developer have been very strong, as Ethan noted. And actually, they've initiated some higher quality development than definitely what's required by zoning. And they've led that conversation. Conversations thus far are additional trails that aren't required, public art, and then higher quality facade. So noted on the direction you're giving, but to give you some confidence, the developer is on board with what you're describing.
I didn't hear more trees.
All right, we'll work on that.
Okay.
Noted.
There aren't many out there right now, right?
Well, yeah, there's no trees now.
Any other questions for Ethan? If not, we will close the public hearing then at 7:18. Do we have a motion to approve resolution number 25-71?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Martin,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Pope,
Yes.
Evans.
Yes.
Motion passed. Moving on to 7B, conduct a continued public hearing and consider approval of the first reading of ordinance number 1133, an official zoning map amendment to rezone 6.36 acres from R175 medium lot residential to R175 medium lot residential with AK animal keeping overlay. We'll open this public hearing at 7:20.
Mayor and council, we have received a request to continue this item to the April 7th city council meeting.
Council have any questions for Rose?
So just to be clear, so we're not talking about the next council meeting, but it'll be actually 2 council meetings from
That's
now.
correct.
Okay.
Is there anyone else that would like to address the council on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing at 7:21. I know we don't want to close the public hearing at
Yep.
7:21.
Just continue it and keep the public hearing open, please.
Do we need a motion for that?
Yes.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Ready,
Yes.
Burkhart,
Yes.
Pope,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 4C, conduct a continued public hearing and consider approval of the first reading of ordinance number 1134, an official zoning map amendment to rezone 4.8 acres from R175 medium lot residential district to R2 low density mixed residential district. And do we open the public hearing if we're continuing it? Okay. So we'll open the public hearing at 7:22.
Comments as previously, we've received a request to continue to the April 7th council meeting.
Do we have a motion to continue
I
the
move.
public hearing till April 7th?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion? Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Burkhart, Pope,
Yes.
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ready.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Cindy, I did think I heard Brian. Did you hear him too? Okay, okay, great.
Moving on to item 5, consent agenda. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion?
Mayor, I do have a question about item 0, or O, not 0, but item O. the debris management policy. I was just reading through it, and it says in there, and maybe this is just a typo, that it will be approved by the council on March 17th, 2025. So. I don't know, we need to address that.
Do we have to take
What
it
should it
off?
say, Matt?
Be approved by the council tonight, or maybe it's on the consent agenda.
That is in the ordinance itself.
It's not an ordinance,
Or
it's a
resolution.
policy.
Animal, it's just a date error.
It was just confusing to me as I was reading through it, because it looked like to me almost like but we're not setting a date for it. We're approving it tonight, so.
Where is that, Councilman Cope?
It's, if you scroll all the way down to where it says City of Johnson Debris Management Policy adopted by City Council, and it's highlighted in yellow, 3/17/25.
Get that corrected.
Yeah, we'll get that changed.
Okay.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Coe,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Burkhart.
Yes.
Moving on to the non-consent agenda, item 7A, consider approval of the third reading and to adopt and publish ordinance number 1132, an official zoning map amendment to rezone 10.03 acres from AR Agricultural Reserve District and R1 100 large lot residential to R1 75 medium lot residential district with AK animal keeping overlay.
We have had no communications from the public and no changes.
Council, any questions for Jacob? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve third reading and to adopt and publish?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second discussion. Cindy, vote please.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Burkhart.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 7B, consider approval of the third reading and to adopt and publish ordinance number 1131, an official zoning map amendment to rezone 3.7 acres from E1 Office Employment District to E2 General Employment District. The properties are located at 5725, 5705, and 5665 West Parkway. Jacob.
Again, no further communication from the public and no changes.
Council, any questions for Jacob? If not, do we have a motion to approve third reading and to adopt and publish ordinance number 1131?
Move.
Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion.
Mayor, I'd
Steve?
like to real quickly.
I'm sorry?
I'd like to speak on this, Mayor.
Okay. Is this Brian?
It
Okay.
is Brian.
Councilman
Thanks.
Burkhart, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I'll take just a moment. I do and want to indicate that I will be voting no on this, primarily because I think that it adds to inconsistency to that business park area. I know that it doesn't include the actual site plan itself for improvement tonight. However, the zoning, I think, as was first introduced at the first meeting, did raise some concern about access from those rear streets. And therefore, the incongruence between E1 and E2 is going to cause me to vote no.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Ready,
Yes.
Burkhart.
No.
Hope,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 7C, consider resolution number 25-68, approving the site plans for the Johnson Community School District softball team building.
So the Johnson Community School District submitted a site plan for the construction of a new locker room and bathroom facility. We're at the existing softball complex at the Johnson Middle School and Wallace Elementary School campus. Just a little history about some background on the site. The campus has undergone multiple updates. The most recent approval was PZ case 18-19. At that time, the school district submitted a site plan outlining significant upgrades to the existing baseball stadium at the Johnston Middle School and Wallace Elementary School campus. Those improvements included the installation of synthetic turf, upgraded bleachers, enhanced bullpens, batting cages, a new backstop, and an improved outfield fence, along with the new softball stadium was constructed adjacent to the baseball stadium, featuring independent bleachers, a press box, dedicated bullpens, batting cages, and synthetic turf. The property is zoned agricultural reserve with the following setbacks. The front and rear yard setbacks are 75 feet, and the side yard setback is 50 feet. As proposed, the site is in compliance with all those bulk regulations. And the proposed construction area, there are no trees of 6-inch caliper or greater, and no trees are proposed to be removed. The open space requirement for the agricultural reserve district is 50%. The site is currently at 92.7. With the proposed new building, it would bring that down to 92.4. The site is also required to have 1 tree and 1 shrub per 1,000 square feet of open space. No additional landscaping is required, as there's adequate landscaping provided on the campus as a whole. As proposed, the site meets all open space and landscaping requirements. The school campus includes around roughly 1,000 parking spaces between the Johnston Middle School and Wallace Elementary School. The middle school is required to have 550 spaces. Wallace Elementary School is required to have 291 for a total of 791 spaces. Looking at the baseball stadium and the softball stadium, they have a combined capacity of 632 people. We look at parking at 1 space per 4 seats, so that would be 158 parking spaces. The addition of the locker room does not require any additional parking, but just wanted to point out that there is adequate parking. The site is serviced by city water and sanitary off of Northwest 59th Court. The proposed building meets all fire protection requirements. Drainage will be managed by connecting to existing storm sewer currently in place on the site. Subject property is not located in a FEMA floodway or floodplain. The site is located more than 300 feet away from a public street and is in the AR district. Therefore, our code states that it is exempt from architectural standards. However, the applicant has provided architectural elevations outlining the proposed materials and what the new building may look like. Planning and Zoning Board or Commission do recommend approval, and I can answer any additional questions you may have.
Council have any questions for Jacob?
Jacob, quickly, in that shaded area, that's where the bathroom is going to be.
Yeah.
And where exactly now?
Gonna go right in this little pocket right here.
And they do already have one though, right?
Yes, they already have
Couple of everything.
a couple buildings out there, I think concession stand and stuff. This is directly just locker rooms and bathrooms for.
Yep, Jacob, I was looking for sort of a schematic of the interior. I didn't really see it, that broke down the locker rooms and the bathrooms and various.
I don't believe that was provided. I think that would be more when that building permit process, when that building permit comes in.
Okay.
for that.
Yeah, but I would just say, so my daughter is a Johnston high school softball player. So right now, one of the, I don't know if you could you pull up the
Ariel?
Yeah, the elevations. Yeah, right there, right, perfect. So you see the building to the right, it says the J in the softball, that's the home team dugout right there. And so the players, there's a small area back there where they can go and change, but no bathrooms. So to access bathrooms, even in the middle of the game, right? If it's in the middle of the game, you gotta go, it's probably 40, 50 yards away. And it's not convenient at all. It's very convenient for the baseball players, not convenient for the softball players. So the softball, the leadership of the athletic department recognized that this was an equity issue. And so they've been real leaders in putting this in funding for this, to build this clubhouse to really make it equitable for both what baseball currently has and softball as well. So I want to salute the school district for doing that. I know that the good softball players and fans are excited about this and having much better facilities. And my daughter would be here tonight to advocate for it, but I think she's at the same show choir event that that Councilman Burkhardt is. So anyway, it was very exciting to see this. And this is the second sort of significant softball-related facilities improvement that we've been involved with in the last few years. First one the city paid for at our parks system, but now this is at the schools set up, and it'll be really a nice addition.
Any other comments or questions for Jacob? Not, do we have a motion to approve resolution number 25-68?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second discussion. Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Burkhart? Cope?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Ready?
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 7D, consider approval of the first reading of ordinance number 1135, amending the Code of Ordinances of the City of Johnston, Iowa, 2007, for the purpose of adopting by reference water, sanitary sewer, stormwater, and solid waste service account policies, fees, and charges. Matt.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. The purpose of this ordinance is to add regulations permitting the city council to adopt an account policy, fees, and charges. Occasionally, there are billing discrepancies for utilities that are provided by the city. This would allow for a correction if needed. The utilities provided or touched by this ordinance include stormwater, sanitary sewer, water, and solid waste and recycling collection. After discussion with city legal counsel, they recommended that we add ordinance 1135 to the city code to make the regulations enforceable. Staff has been working on preparing a utility adjustment policy to address billing issues when they arise. The policy is currently being developed and will be reviewed by legal and then come to city council for adoption.
Council, have any questions for Matt?
I do. Sorry. Quickly. So you said there are discrepancies, billing discrepancies. How often does that happen?
It doesn't happen a lot, but sometimes, I mean, and I'll just give you an example, as water meters age, sometimes they start to underread. So then when we go in there and we have to replace a water meter, we can see that they're underreading, so we would be able to recapture those costs. Or there's been an instance where I believe a resident was charged double for his recycling or his trash collection. So this would allow us to refund that, just by ordinance that would be enforceable for us to be able to collect those funds. It doesn't happen very often, but it does happen.
Any other questions for Matt? If not, do we have a motion to approve first reading of ordinance number 1135?
So moved.
Second.
A motion and a second discussion. Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Cope?
Yes.
Evans?
Yes.
Martin?
Yes.
Ready?
Yes.
Burkhart?
Motion passed. Item 7E, consider approval of the first reading of ordinance number 1136, providing that general property taxes levied and collected each year on all property located within the Dragonwood Urban Renewal Area in the city of Johnston, county of Polk, state of Iowa, by and for the benefit of the state of Iowa, city of Johnston, county of Polk, Johnston Community School District, and other taxing districts, be paid to a special fund for the payment of principal and interest on loans, monies advanced to an indebtedness, including bonds issued or to be issued, incurred by the city in connection with the Dragonwood Urban Renewal Area, the Dragonwood Urban Renewal Plan. Ethan.
This is the first of 3 required ordinance readings to implement a tax increment financing ordinance on the entirety of the newly created Dragonwood Urban Renewal Area, which you approved earlier this evening. Staff anticipates the base year valuation will be set at the January 1st, 2025 assessed value by the auditor. Any property tax collected on assessed value beyond that may be segregated into a dedicated account for this district. As this has been designated a commercial and industrial economic development urban renewal area, the sunset date on the division of taxes within this TIF district will be set at 20 years from the year that revenue is first divided per Iowa Code, Chapter 403. As earlier indicated, staff has had initial conversations with a single developer. We expect additional discussions to begin occurring with others and other landowners over the next several years. And also, just as a reminder, all development agreements are negotiated on a case-by-case basis and require council approval. This does not approve any specific agreement or project here tonight.
Council, any questions? Seeing none, do we have a motion to approve first reading of ordinance number 1136?
So moved.
Second.
Do you have a motion and a second discussion? Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Coe.
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 7F, consider resolution number 25-72, initiating text amendments to Chapter 165, definitions, Chapter 167.03, general provision for zoning districts and other related district chapter requirements as necessary, and resolution number 25-73, approving a moratorium on the allowance and usage of Chapter 167.035B, structures above the height limit, until text amendments to Chapter 165 definitions, Chapter 167.03 general provision for zoning districts and other related district requirements are complete. Rose.
Mayor and council, I have two resolutions in front of you tonight. The first would be to initiate a series of text amendments, really stemming from the use of Chapter 167.035B, which is typically what we refer to as that administrative height exception that currently exists in the zoning code. The second would be to place a moratorium on the ability to use that provision until the text amendments have been drafted and officially adopted. So to circle back to the first, I would envision that this will be a series of text amendments. First and foremost, looking at that particular section, 167.03, 5B, that provides the zoning administrator the ability to administratively allow a 10-foot height exception to those items that are listed there in every zoning district. So the first thing I think that we will do is evaluate, frankly, what is provided in that list. Are those things still relevant? Are there other things that should be considered? The second thing is that, depending on the answer of the first question, providing definitions for the things that are in that list, because as we're all aware, some of those things are not otherwise defined in the zoning ordinance. So again, just sort of good housekeeping, making sure anything we call out as a use or some kind of exception or any provision has a corresponding definition. So I think there will certainly be amendments to the definition section. Likely to that chapter itself, that the way it's currently worded, again, if we take things out or put some things in. But then the other part that I am not as certain about is, again, the way this height exception exists today. For the items listed, that 10-foot height exception is available for those items in every zoning district. And I think it makes some sense to consider what those items are that we think maybe could warrant an administrative height exception, but then look specifically at the zoning district. So in other words, maybe not all items would have a height exception in every zoning district. Maybe it would only be in certain districts. So I think definitions for certain will need amendments. I think this very section that is kind of the impetus for this will need it. And then, for example, if we were going to provide a height exception in, I don't know, an E1 district and only in an E1 district for something, we of course would have to make the appropriate amendments to that chapter as well. And that's the part I'm not entirely sure yet because we haven't fully started drafting. So that is the intention of initiating the text amendments, is to be able to look at those pieces, look at definitions in particular, if and where those things should be allowed, to make sure that it's clearly and narrowly defined. And again, the second piece would be the moratorium that basically takes that chapter 16703 5B and does not allow it to be used. So basically, the zoning administrator would not be able to use that height allowance for 6 months or until whatever the text amendments are in place, whichever is earlier. So again, two related resolutions to consider tonight, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mayor, I have a question. So it mentions approving a moratorium on the allowance and usage of the chapter 167 on structures above a height limit. And to me, a moratorium means we are not going to look at or approve, pass anything during this time. Puts a halt on it. Would we not still need a moratorium? Well, I mean, we want to initiate this text amendment to come up with these definitions, but we don't have a moratorium on its definition. So how do you put a moratorium on that?
The proposed moratorium is meant to say that if that resolution is passed, that the zoning administrator can't use that exception on any of those things. So it basically takes that even as an option until the definitions and everything.
Okay, I understand now. It's all included in a package.
Yes.
And if we, for example, if we were already, knew about a site plan for a church that was already out there, how much standing does this moratorium have? Since if we pass it, does this have to be passed 3 times?
No, it's a resolution. In the end, the text amendments would be ordinances and would have to be, but the moratorium is a resolution.
I guess what I'm trying to say.
I think
is,
I do,
If there's
yeah.
something already in the pipeline.
Yes.
And we are making changes to their property that they bought, how much standing do we have?
So right now, we do not currently have any site plans submitted by application that would be impacted by this. Right now, we have the site plan you just acted on, and we have one other submittal, which has no height issue. So I will defer to the city attorney, but because we don't have any applications, it should not be a consideration. We have pre-development meetings and conversations with people all the time about all kinds of things. Until it walks through the door or an application is filed, so to speak, we can't control that. I would also just say that depending on, the site plan and what zoning district it's in, remember that these right now, and it's one of the things we want to look at, is that 10-foot height exception applies to those items across the board in all zoning districts. So if you have an underlying zoning district that happens to have a comparatively much lower maximum height than perhaps what we have just seen, 10 feet on a 35-foot maximum height in a district is not going to be useful to that cause anyway, to be frank. But the answer remains the same. We don't have any pending site plans that this will impact.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Can I? So in this document, this says staff report height definition amendment initiated PDF file. Structures permitted above the height limit, and you have a lot of different structures, and the zoning administrator approve a modification to the height limit of no more than 10 feet. Modification exceeding 10 feet shall be approved by the Board of Adjustment as a variance. The second point, Board of Adjustment can can approve about 10 feet? What's the limit for them to approve beyond 10 feet?
So this, our code actually would not even need to list that second provision because the right of the zoning board of adjustment exists in other statute. But to answer your question, a zoning board could grant, there is not an upper limit on a variance that could be granted there. Regarding any kind of height variance, not just this exception.
Okay. So somebody can erect an 80-foot and just say Board of Adjustment, there's a variance, and they can approve it.
They could if they could make the appropriate findings to do so. There is not an upper limit on what they can grant for a variance.
I would just say, Councilman Reddy, that current Iowa law has a very strict standard, very high standard to meet to receive a variance. So a fear that the Board of Adjustment would allow a 100-foot tile structure in a area that only allows 35 or 45 or 50 feet. The standard that basically, the Iowa law would really make that very hard for that variance to stand up. So there's other protections out there.
What Councilman Cope is referring to is in Iowa, unlike many states, a zoning board of adjustment can grant a variance based on unnecessary hardship, which means typically something very specific and literal to that piece of land that is unique to that piece of land. Some other states, some of our neighboring states have something that's called practical difficulty, which allows a bit more flexibility in the types of findings the board has to make. In my opinion, it's always difficult to grant a height variance because the argument that has to be made by that applicant is a bit counterintuitive. If you can build something taller, you can generally always build it lower. So unless there's something topographic, maybe would be a finding that could be made, but the standard in Iowa for a board to grant an actual variance, I agree with Councilman Cope, is challenging in most cases.
All right.
And just as a reminder too, the case that we recently had in front of the Board of Adjustment was not a variance case. They were appealing the ruling of the zoning administrator, which is completely different.
I agree with that. Part of that is the recent one, but in the future, I'm just considering, will they use the same argument that they did for that particular instance for building a newer one with the larger height thing?
Right. And so I get one question I do have is that I noticed that we're talking about the height ordinance. I do believe that our most recent case, frankly, also highlighted a challenge in our sign ordinance language, especially around the word symbol. And that was part of, I think, what kind of ended up creating an opening for the concept that maybe this, whatever, I don't want to get into that. But to me, that ordinance and on our definition of what constitutes a sign, and especially that word symbol, I think is problematic. And I don't see that ordinance listed here for review.
Yeah, I think as part of looking at the definitions in general, we can certainly look at those pieces. For sign, even talking about the additional place where it talks about copy. I guess in my mind, I lump kind of, yes, this is specifically about height, but I think when we go into the definitions, there are probably many pieces that we should take a look at.
No, but that isn't necessarily part of the moratorium.
No,
Okay,
that is,
because that's
right.
a larger.
Yes,
We
the
get
more,
sign requests all the time,
Right,
right? So,
yes.
we certainly wouldn't want to put a moratorium on issuing signs, right? But I guess I want to make sure that we're looking at the sign definition. I wasn't sure which code section that was called out, or if we kind of in the generic kind of other related sections that you identify that being part of the sign. But at the same time, I'm glad that you're envisioning that this resolution tonight will include a review of the sign ordinance, but not including that in the moratorium, which is what I'm hearing you say.
And I guess just to clarify, and we can certainly also look at that, what I was referring to is I think the challenge and some of the things that were raised most recently are not literally in the sign ordinance, but in the definition of what signs are and how they're defined. And so I think the first thing to do with that is to go through the definitions that are related to that, because that is where I think some of that conversation went around, not necessarily the provisions of the actual sign code, but in what was defined as a sign and what was copy and what wasn't. So those all live in the definitions section. So I think we can still get there with initiating these text amendments. And yeah, I would not envision, I'm not proposing any kind of moratorium on sign code with this.
Because that's, I'm glad to hear that, because up till now, we've been talking, and your comments were about height.
Yes,
But
that's fair.
the sign
Yeah.
will be part of that too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I understand correctly, that you're going to look at that definition of the signs and everything and probably correct them if needed.
Yeah, we will
Not
look at
part of
that
this.
along with, like, for example, in here, we don't define what an elevator bulkhead is. We don't, some of these, so we're going to be looking through, all of those definitions live kind of in our general definition section. So we will take a pass through that.
Rose, have you thought about the process for making these changes at all?
A specific timeline, is that the question?
Well, timeline, but also just in terms of, staff will prepare a draft.
Oh,
And
yes.
then are you going to take it to one of the ad hoc committees?
I think we probably would.
Feedback?
I have not sat down and put an actual timeline together, although we will start working on it now. But I think internally staff would land on what we think is a pretty good draft of what we would propose. And then, yes, I think probably,
Some vetting before we.
yeah.
Right. I
And
think
because
ad
as-
hoc would be important to do that.
And because as we're drafting, we might come up with a couple alternatives too that we would want some other feedback in. And then following those conversations, of course, ultimately to planning and zoning and back here.
Okay, any other questions for Rose? If not, do we have a motion to approve resolution number 25-72?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion. Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Martin,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Coe,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 7G, consider approval of claims in the amount of,
I think you missed on the motors.
how about motion for resolution number 25-73?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion.
So just so, as I understood it in reading the resolution, it puts a moratorium in place for 6 months or until a new ordinance is put into place, whichever is sooner. So if we adopt a new ordinance in 2 months, then the moratorium is lifted. Or if we haven't acted in 6 months, the moratorium is lifted.
Yes, and I think it's just important to have some kind of.
Yep, I agree.
It could certainly be extended.
No, exactly. I just kind of want to make sure that,
Yes.
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Any further discussion? If not, Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Ready,
Yes.
Coe,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin.
Yes.
Motion passed. Item 7G, consider approval of claims in the amount of $1,203,863.30.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second discussion. Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Coe,
Yes.
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ready,
Yes.
Motion passed. City administrator staff comments.
I don't have any comments. I do think Matt has a
Okay,
comment.
I found this on the web.
Not sure what that was all about.
I'm not sure what would be on the web either, so.
Got one quick update. We did send out letters for the East of Merle Hay North of 62nd public meeting. It'll be held on Wednesday, March 26th. I will work with Janet to get a calendar invite out to the mayor and council.
Very good. Anything else, staff? If not, city council? Councilman Evans?
Nothing, thanks.
I pass, thanks.
I'll pass.
Unanimous.
I don't want to break the break the flow here, so I'll pass as well. Do we have a closed session tonight?
Yes.
Okay. So the next item on the agenda is a closed session. Per Iowa Code Section 21.51J, to discuss the purchase of particular real estate only where premature disclosure could be reasonably expected to increase the price the governmental body would have to pay for that property. The minutes and the tape recording of a session closed under this paragraph shall be available for public examination when the transaction discussed is completed. Do we have a motion to go into closed session?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second discussion. Cindy, vote please.
Councilmember Cope,
Yes.
Evans,
Yes.
Martin,
Yes.
Ready.
Yes.
Motion passed.